This is not how this is supposed to look, is it? I have. Sorry, guys, I'm gonna look like a bit of a no-face here. I'm not even sure if this is the camera we're using or it's that camera. I guess it's this one. Hey everyone, just give me a sec to. This is kind of like just get acquainted with what's happening here. I am not very clued up about how this stuff works. But obviously, in the meanwhile, you guys would know that you probably haven't seen me for a very long time on this channel, probably since December, I think, when we did the Mabel Chinomona story. For those that follow me offline, you guys would know that one of the reasons you've not been able to see me is because in my other life, as a journalist, I do work as a photojournalist in the Premier League and in the EFL. So December did a lot of games, January did a lot of games. It's been a lot that's happening. That's why I've not been here. But I thought we could try this because this is a viable way of me continuously giving you guys updates. We do have like a lot of investigations that are coming, but on stories like these, I know a lot of people have sent messages. They want to know about the constitutional amendments. They want to know about a bunch of different things. They want to know our opinions, the stories we're doing. And I think going live could be something that works, but I'm not very tech savvy. Just give me a minute more to try and see. There's anyone in the comments who knows how to like remove the background. Everything is all odd here. I'm surrounded by like a blue background, which is odd. But anyway, look, today we just have to deal with this. Might not be your normal Dagger production quality, but you guys will just have to understand that it's my first time. It's happened off the cuff. So about around 9:30 in the morning today, I personally got a call from a source in the SAPS, and he said to me, look, there's been a shooting at a residence that is raised to the Mugabes in Hyde Park, and we think one of the sons was involved. From that moment when we found out, it was now a case of trying to figure out which one of the sons was involved. I think initially the first thing we were told was it would have been Robert Mugabe Jr., but we asked around some sources. We're told Robert Mugabe Jr. is actually in drug rehabilitation, so it's not him, which then only left Chatunga being the other option. We are told that police arrived at the place. Chatunga Mugabe had barricaded himself within the house, and they wouldn't necessarily let the police in or let anyone in for that matter. So there was a bit of a standoff. The SAPS called in hostage negotiators to try and negotiate to get them to open the door. First to open to allow the injured person to be obviously taken to hospital, and then for them to get out of the house so police could conduct their investigations. You will see that in South African media, South African police have not named Chatunga Mugabe. They've just mentioned the ages of the suspects, and I think that's because under South African law, the police cannot actually name any suspect until they actually appear in court, or I believe they're charged and they make their first appearance in court. I know in Zimbabwe we can name arrested people, but in South Africa that's not the case. In England, you can't name someone until they've been formally charged, even before they appear in court. So you've got all these laws, they're like privacy laws. I know in Zimbabwe, we can report that someone is being investigated. In South Africa, you can't, because if the investigation goes nowhere, then you've made an implication of wrongdoing. So it's a violation of libel laws or defamation laws. In the UK, it's privacy laws. But back onto the important story, which is South African media might not necessarily name him. I know IOL didn't name him and the police didn't name him, but some might. But he's the one who's been arrested. The details on the ground, that there was a skirmish or disagreement with one of the staff members. Initial reports had said it was a guard. One of the SAPS people on scene who spoke to a reporter was there, said it wasn't a guard, it was instead a gardener who was shot. That person who's been shot is in critical condition and is in hospital. So we obviously thought of doing a live reaction video and speaking to you guys, because you guys would obviously know that this wouldn't be the first time that we've done a report about Chatunga Mugabe. About 7 months ago, we did a report where he had brutally assaulted security guards at a house opposite his mother's farm. He beat up the guards with steel rods, steel pipes, broke one of the guy's legs, fractured his hip and fractured his skull. But that wasn't the only victim. There was a man who asked his driver for directions at some point, and Chatunga got out of the car and he attacked that person with a taser. He tased him on the neck. The person collapsed. He was charged in relation to firearms offenses with relation to that, because a taser is considered a firearm. There were also about 3 or 4 different incidences where he had either been involved in road rage and then pointed a gun at people. There were incidences at the Mugabe residence itself, the farm, where Chatunga had pulled out weapons and he had either fired them to the ground or fired them in the air or pointed them at whoever he was having a disagreement with. When we did that story, we did get informal communication from people connected to the Mugabe family that said, look, the issue is long-standing. It's because the Mugabe family is being abused. That's something that we looked at, and it was proven that they were gold pannas that were going to the Mugabe farm. They were digging up the place. They cut down orange trees, and they claimed to have been sent by Auxilium Mnangagwa. Auxilium Mnangagwa's people said, no, that's not the case. We would never send anybody to cut anybody's orange trees or mango trees. If we wanted to punish Grace Mugabe, we would just do it, blatantly. Wouldn't need to do underhand tactics like that. But there was that impasse where pretty much that farm in Mazoe, it's full of open pit mine holes now, because artisanal miners were just going in there and digging up the place. Chatunga at some point went to go and see General Chiwenga to go, and say to him, look, we're having this problem. We need your help. We need your protection, which is what led to the Chiwengas actually causing up a lot with the Mugabe family. You would have seen the Chiwenga's wife and Grace Mugabe attend a couple of functions together. They were causing up, but that's also the time when Chiwenga and Emerson Mnangagwa were kind of like falling out. So we had this case where Chiwenga was trying to also, butt address some of his own support. Obviously, you would know that in the grander succession things in Zimbabwe, there is that challenge where Chiwenga within ZANU-PF is not seen as having enough grassroots support. It just doesn't have enough supporters in the party. He spent the majority of his career in the army. He had been a commissar during the war, but then went into the army and had been a career military man throughout. So within the structures of ZANU-PF and the cells and this and that, he was seen as largely repulsive, as somebody who was parachuted in. And a significant part of the ZANU-PF party wants to return the party to a majority civilian rule, as opposed to at the moment where a lot of people crisscross from the military, then they join the party without necessarily having earned their stripes within the party as politicians. So obviously Chiwenga was, he was open to speaking to the Mugabes, because there is a lot of hostility for Emerson Mnangagwa, especially among Mugabe's sleeper cells. There are like a lot of sleeper cells within ZANU-PF that are very loyal to Mugabe. In 2018, Emerson Mnangagwa had like 50% of the vote. ZANU-PF had almost 70%. Pretty much followed the same trend in the next election in 2023. So in the 2 elections that we've had, you've had an instance where 20% of ZANU-PF voters vote for ZANU-PF as a party, but do not vote for Emerson Mnangagwa as a person. And that is largely attributed to those Mugabe sleeper cells that really haven't forgiven him for the coup. So Chiwenga getting, the Mugabes on his good side would have helped. But nonetheless, that intervention is what really helped Chatunga get away from a lot of those cases. None of them, there's not really been follow-ups in court, and the cases have pretty much gone cold. The people have been threatened, and that was obviously at the intervention of General Chiwenga. Chatunga has then left Zimbabwe. Doesn't spend a lot of time in Zimbabwe as much since that incident. He's been spending a lot of time in Hyde Park. His mom doesn't stay in the country. From what we understand, she spends a lot of her time outside of Zimbabwe in Asia, to be specific. She can't necessarily travel to South Africa unless they at least reach out and try and sort out things, because if you recall, in 2017, Grace Mugabe beat up someone. She assaulted a person, and she had charges of assault causing grievous bodily harm, and she fled South Africa, and she's never returned since then. So that issue was never really quite settled. AfriForum had got in. They were trying to support Grace Mugabe's victim. So that's made like a complication where Grace Mugabe doesn't travel to South Africa, because at least she would be arrested if she went to South Africa. But back to the story at hand. That's what happened in the morning. A firearm was discharged. Police are not sure who discharged the firearm, but they are told that it is either Chatunga or someone who he was with. But Chatunga and somebody else are now in custody of the SAPS. They are now supposedly cooperating with police, although earlier on, like I said, we had a report outside and they were not cooperating. They barricaded themselves inside the house, and Chatunga was refusing to come out. It would be great to note that it's happened in the past. that the Mugabes have pretended to cooperate with South African police. If I take you back to what happened in 2017, Grace Mugabe gave Fikile Mbalula, who was the Minister of Police at the time, assurances that she would cooperate with the police. And on the basis of those assurances, Mbalula then released a statement saying that Grace Mugabe would be appearing at Randburg Magistrates Court at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Mbalula called off the police. They didn't want to make a spectacle. She was the wife of a head of state. As the SAPS, didn't really go on overdrive or secure Grace Mugabe and waited for her to voluntarily appear in court. She then didn't voluntarily appear in court. She flew out of South Africa. And the next thing, while I was actually at court, I remember outside, I went to Randburg Magistrates Court because I was in South Africa at the time. And while we were outside, we then got confirmation from Daily Maverick, who had been in Harare, that her Grace Mugabe's motorcade had then been spotted speeding down from Airport Road and going to the Blue Roof, and that was the end of it. So it's something that's happened before. I would think that maybe circumstances would be slightly different this time, because obviously Grace was facing assault. Assault is it's a serious charge, but it's not in the same level as attempted murder. You have a gunshot victim in this case who is in hospital, critically injured. All the indications that he will survive at the moment, but attempted murder is a Schedule 6 offense. It's quite serious. It can easily upgrade itself to unaliving someone if this guy does pass away. So it's difficult to call in terms of how far will the cooperation go. I'll definitely keep an eye on the SAPS feed itself to try and see what happens next. But yeah, that is pretty much what's happened. Forgive me for continuously glancing. It's because, like I said, this is my first time doing a live setup. I usually just record in the studio. I am not familiar with YouTube Live. I see it's got a blue background and stuff happening. I don't know how to turn that off. I will have to learn how to do that. The other way I know is to use something called OBS, but I just didn't have the time. Yeah, but let's see. We've got some comments. My kind of long time. Hope you'll be updating on a more consistent basis. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. Like I said, it's just that I had a plan to always ensure that I'll give you guys a lot more consistent updates this year. But then things happened in my other career. I didn't think I'll be shooting in the Premier League in 2025 because that pathway usually takes quite a number of years. I started trying to get into the Premier League in about 2020, and I only got in the EFL in 2025. So I was looking at maybe a couple of years in the EFL before the Premier League came calling, and then the Premier League came calling, and now I'm due to shoot in the Champions League. So, but obviously that's not fair on you guys, because you guys have invested a lot of your time and effort following Dug Up, so you do deserve updates. But this setup, for instance, where I don't have to sit down, set up the studio, record, edit, I think it works. I think it's extremely helpful because obviously I can, do live reactions, give you live updates. Because take it like in this instance, I've got the Dropbox from the correspondent who was on the ground with the videos from the standoff and this and that. But editing all of that would have taken such an incredible amount of time. But this seems like it's a solution that could work. It will allow me to do that. But obviously, to appease you guys, we have that incredible investigation about Paul Tungwarara that I've been promising you guys that it's coming, and it's coming, and it is coming. It's just that when we thought we would have it ready 2 weeks ago, we then had trouble confirming some of the academic qualifications with the universities in Sierra Leone that he claimed to have gone to. And then there were like other additions. So we've got that Paul Tungwarara investigation. We have kind of continued working. I'm sure you guys would have seen there was a story in IOL where I helped out Johnny Maromo, for instance, about a Zimbabwean artist who was wanted in South Africa. I gave him a comment. It's a story we had tried to do as Dug Up in January 2025. But then South Africa's Department of Justice then said to us, can you hold on doing your story, because our goal is to secure the suspect first instead of giving you a news story. Obviously, sometimes when you're practicing journalism, you have to balance up the responsibility between ethical reporting and, also then not interfering with the police or interfering with legal processes. So sometimes I want to bring out a story, but if the authorities say, hey, look, can you do us a favor? Can you just slow down on your story while we get out things in a row so the person doesn't flee? We have to do that. They then didn't honor their commitment, to then get back to us afterwards, up until IOL got in touch and said, when we were investigating the story, we were then told by a source at the NPA, South Africa's NPA, that there was an organization called Dug Up that had been in touch asking about this particular warrant of arrest. And that's how we ended up as part of that story. So we've been doing a lot of work here and there, but I promise there'll be a lot more updates. But for the guys that have just tuned in, that is pretty much what we know. Early morning today, I got a call from a very good friend in the SAPS who said there's been a shooting at one of the houses owned by Robert Mugabe's family. We quickly found out that it was one of Robert Mugabe's kids involved. We then did a bit of digging. We initially assumed it was Robert Jr., but then we found out that Robert Jr. is in drug rehabilitation, so it couldn't have been him. That left Chatunga only. Guns are not something that Bonai is. We've never had any report about her being in guns, so we knew then it was probably going to be Bellarmine. We sent a reporter to the house in Hyde Park, but when he got there, there were hostage negotiators outside. Chatunga had barricaded himself. They wouldn't open the house. Eventually, hostage negotiators got through, and Chatunga and another person was arrested. Some organizations have named him, some have not. The police won't name Chatunga until he is charged. If he is not charged, they will not name him. That's something I suppose that it's important for you guys to keep in the back of your mind, because if police decide that they're not going to charge him, or it was just the other person that shot him and he wasn't involved, they'll only name the person that's charged, because South African law says they can only name people that have been officially charged. And obviously the background and context that I thought was useful to add was that 7 months ago, if you look up Chatunga here, we did a video about him, about why Chatunga Mugabe is basically like his dictator father. And you had stories of him going into road rage and beating people up, pulling guns in Harare. He tased a man in the neck who had asked for directions and accused him of disrespect. He beat up security guards who guard a mine opposite his parents' farm, broke one of the other guy's hip socket, broke his thigh bone, broke his shin bone, and fractured his skull. Beat up the other guy as well, who's now in a wheelchair. So it was really, really, really bad. That story didn't go anywhere because, like I said, eventually Chatunga sought the intervention of Vice President Chiwenga, and he had some grounds where he was complaining that his family were being abused at their farm by artisanal miners, Makorokoza, who were saying they were being sent by Auxilium Nangagwa, and eventually Chiwenga did kind of help. That story is not gone anywhere in the courts, but Chatunga doesn't really spend time in Zim anymore since then. He spends a lot of time in Joburg, where there are now reports that he's shot someone. So that's pretty much all that I could give you guys. I need to dash out because I've got a dentist appointment, then I've got a doctor's appointment afterwards. But I promise you will have a video again tomorrow. And going forward, I will commit that between now and tomorrow, I will learn how to fix this whole blue background thing. It's doing my head in. But I will understand how that works. And then I will do a lot more videos, because I can do a live video if I'm on the move, if I'm rolling. And then hopefully we can continue digging up. I'm so used to saying dug up, that now call it digging up, but yeah, it's digging up by dug up. So yeah, guys, thanks for tuning in. I am gonna dash. That is the update. If I get any more details between now and in the evening, and depending on how these streams continue to perform, this is something that could really work as an alternative, so you guys don't get starved of content. It's been long. Last spoke to you guys in early December. This is February. That's unacceptable. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and until I see you guys next time, bye-bye.